This is Speak Up. I am Sandra Shorty. Welcome back to this show. I am very delighted to have Andrew Lester back with us. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Hi, pleasure to be back.
Good.
Thank you.
Andrew has an MBA. He's a certified public accountant. He worked as a financial analyst in industry before spending 40 years on Wall Street. Therefore, I have certainty that he knows both industries operate. Today, Andrew is going to begin by talking about something very basic to understand the financial industry. It is process. He will tell us why mastering the rules is so important. He will give us one very current and very insightful example.
Thank you, Sandra. I mean, process is one of my favorite words when it comes to what goes on, because all too often you'll have an exciting headline and it doesn't really do service to the viewers in understanding what's happening. An example at the moment is you've had these accusations of a $1 billion fraud in Minnesota.
But you don't know the background.
And you don't know the background. And what happens with it is to steal something of a de minimis amount is not a big deal. But once you get into millions, much less hundreds of millions or billions, you need a whole infrastructure to do it. It doesn't happen by accident. An example I'd give is if you order something from Amazon, they'll deliver it within 24 hours anywhere in the country. If you say, I didn't get it, they'll send you a picture showing the delivery. In Minnesota, you had a circumstance where you have a population of transplanted individuals. 81% of them are on government assistance.
81% are on government assistance.
81% of Somalians in Minnesota.
And they don't share the same culture as we do, I don't presume.
They don't have the same culture, they don't have the same problem. The leaders of what had gone on, they're all photographed having fundraisers with Governor Walz, with Attorney General Ellison, with Ilhan Omar. You find out they're contributing or making kickback contributions.
Campaign contributions.
That's a better
key
terminology. Campaign contributions in order to keep it going. And, you know, although the mainstream media reports on it temporarily in terms of a headline, they don't talk about how this has gone on for years and years. And the amount of money taken from all these government programs are really many billions of dollars.
Well, what is in the government programs that makes it possible?
Well, that's a really good point. So the headline will be, we want to be helpful to others. We want to be welcoming. We want to provide services to people who are needy. Once that's set up and done and institutionalized, it just perpetuates itself. And there's very little vetting done after the fact by the government to say who are the recipients, should this actually happen. And on a larger scale, this is happening in many states, in many programs, and it's contributing significantly to the financial distress on our country.
And there's and built into the setup is no process for prosecution.
Correct. I mean, that's really a critical point. Part of what happens is when you're in industry, companies have a profit motive. They want to have process. They want to check what they're doing. They want to make sure there's no improprieties. Yes, invariably there are problems at points in time, but they're contained and they're caught by their own auditing procedures. From the government perspective, more, I'll say, bad actors have upped their game and set up an institutional type of process of being a bad actor and perpetuating what they're doing so that they rarely are prosecuted to the extent of the law. Monies are not recovered by the government, and there's no auditing on an ongoing basis to catch bad behavior.
Examples?
Well, if you look in New York State, for example, it happens in all processes. More recently, I live in Westchester. I see people complaining about their Con Edison bills and the huge jumps in electricity, which are enormous jumps. there were all sorts of small laws and initiatives. Governor Hochul has done a pretty dreadful job of some of this, but to be fair to her, Governor Cuomo had not been substantially better. So they pass rules and regulations that will cause prices to go up substantially, but won't take effect for 2, 3, or 4 years. So they sign it into law with much fanfare, and you don't see the effects of it. So all of a sudden now, things are going up sequentially, and it becomes an enormous burden on people. The overwhelming majority of them are on fixed income, or they have limited ability to increase their earnings. And this is really squeezing their ability. So when you hear items like affordability, these are all key elements of affordability that's making it anything other than affordable, because it's not being explained honestly to people what's going on. When they talk about their quote-unquote Green New Deals, they eliminated a nuclear facility, which is okay, but then they don't have fracking, they don't bring in transmission lines, they don't permit pipelines to bring in natural gas. That all contributes to us having one of the highest utility costs in the country. So we become it becomes a burden for the people who live here, but it also, we're non-competitive for business. Businesses are moving to what you could say red states, but they're not moving for political reasons necessarily. They're moving because economically it's easier to conduct their business and much cheaper. So we're structurally disadvantaging ourselves.
Okay. Next, Andrew will talk about tax loopholes, namely how the top 0.25% get to shelter their wealth.
Well,
but before that, what would you like the audience to take away with them in terms of what you just spoke about?
Well, people have to be more involved. They have to, you can't just go for a headline. You have to understand what's being done, what the costs are, and what the advantages and disadvantages are. Everything has an associated cost. Some you're willing to live with and some you're not. So when they start with headlines like healthcare is a human right, housing is a human right, everything is a human right. But America used to have a policy of helping other countries and not just importing everyone who was economically disadvantaged. It would cost us 2 to 3 cents on the dollar to help them out in their countries of origin. But now if we have to pay US type of prices, we just can't do it. So it's unaffordable. It might be a human right, but it's no longer something within our economic purview to provide for all these people.
I think people talking about Con Ed and things like that. There used to be something where price increases were vetted by a commission. That's been taken away?
Well, some of them have, but also with utilities. Once you approve things from like Con Ed, every state has their own public utility commission. What they let you do is Con Ed will come up and say, we need to spend X amount of dollars. And then once it's done and it comes online, they get an embedded rate of return of 9, 10, 12%. So their incentive is to spend more money because it builds in future price increases. I mean, it's sort of remarkable with the price of oil collapsing for the Con Ed bills to go up. It's sort of counterintuitive, but that's basically what's happening.
Andrew, you were going to talk about tax loopholes, namely how the top 0.25% gets to shelter their wealth.
Yes, I mean, the tax situation is both complicated, but critical to addressing to improve the wealth and financial health of the country. So, for example, once you have a conversation or debate of what the tax rate should be, then all is lost. That helps the super wealthy because they pay significant amount of tax in aggregate, but only on a tiny portion of their earnings and net worth. States can no longer keep up with their spending. In California this week is talking about passing a quote-unquote one-time wealth tax of 5% on people who are worth over $1 billion. So it sounds simple enough to do, and it's not going to really hurt them. The question is how to calculate the net worth. Is it on stock that they haven't sold? And nothing's ever one time. New York put in a temporary millionaires tax 20-something years ago just to help out through hard times. It's never gone away. And once you put in these taxes and they're not indexed to inflation, more and more people are caught up in what the $1 million is. So it's really a very dangerous element. I mean, it's funny, Rand Paul, who I'm not necessarily in agreement with on many issues, had this idea of a flat tax. The flat tax, although it sounds simplistic, was actually the best of all ideas, because we don't need millions of lines of tax code unless it serves somebody's purpose. I go to my accountant, I file my taxes. It's only those who can really take advantage of incredible loopholes, who have Hampton's farms classified as agricultural properties, who have the backyard garden counted as a farm, who have fabulous homes that they write off against their business, saying that it's as business use. Those are the type of things that go on. So I don't really care on how people spend their personal funds, but until you eliminate those structural advantages, of course, there should have been taxes on hedge funds, so on carried interest. I mean, as it happens, the lawyer who helped create it was Chuck Schumer. So that's why it sort of never disappears. I mean, these 1031 real estate exchanges really go to serve elevating the price of real estate, because if it can shelter these perpetual gains, it doesn't really matter what you sell something for and what you buy it for. You're doing a deal that you think is to your advantage, but it goes to artificially elevate prices because of the tax avoidance. So I really think that we're in need of significant reform of the underlying policies and eliminating it. One of the biggest risks of eliminating it is that's the incentive to contribute to your local politician, to keep those structural elements that benefit you personally.
Well, get exemptions.
The exemptions, correct. So I think the community and the country would be better served if you had a real simplified version. If you want to contribute what you want to charity, that would be fine. You could do whatever, not telling people how to spend their money, just leveling the playing field so that you taxed on what you earn without being able to hide any of it.
Yes, and the biggest, what really strikes me in the face more is that because of inflation, and because people can't get to the millionaire level, but it really means nothing.
Correct.
But then you have to pay, and so you are a millionaire.
And you look at it, I mean, there's...
Upon you have to pay your tax, and so you are a millionaire.
Correct. I mean, but if you look at what happens, you can merely look at the headlines in the paper to understand what's going on. If you look at professional sports franchises, it reached a point where their valuation was too great, so the leagues changed the rules. Now private equity can come in. Now corporations can come in, because you didn't have a deep enough pocket to pay these elevated prices. Now they set up different businesses between the sports teams, the transmission rights, the redistribution. They're trying to go global to bring in more and more money. I applaud them for what they're doing. It's very smart and value creation, but the rest of the country shouldn't be the ones who absorb the costs for the private wealth that's being created.
Andrew, what do you want the audience to take away with them?
Well, I think that more and more people think they're of a belief that this is the way it is, that things can't really change, and this is the way it's always been. It hasn't always been like this. Things are structurally different. You look in New York City, there's another great example. Years ago, a great strategist from Morgan Stanley, Byron Wien, late in his career, went to work for a Blackstone Group. He wrote a piece that was published in Barron's talking about how New York was being hurt by unions and pensions from healthcare plans, and it was unsustainable. Barron's comes out on Saturdays. Monday, the heads of all the unions came into Blackstone to sit down with them and saying, do you know how much of our money do you manage? Do you know the aggregate amount of fees you collect? That money's all at risk if we don't get an apology and a retraction. So he came out basically saying that there are multiple factors that cause this financial distress. This is just one of many. He didn't mean to blame them or whatever. He never published on this topic again. It doesn't get written up. So you find that different parts of the country, the groups with the most pronounced financial interest are really just factoring their own interest. I mean, New York talks about its deficits, all the contracts. We don't have strikes anymore. They talk about investing in education. It really means just paying more money to the teachers and the unions. They don't want testing. I mean, we pay triple the price of the state of Florida for education on a per pupil basis, and we have dramatically worse results.
Well, you have to realize that we're having a tremendous influx of children from South America, and they don't even speak the language. And this dilutes the results of testing.
That's a very fair comment. What I find interesting is in New York, where you have that, and you have many children from disadvantaged homes, many people contributed significantly to create charter schools. Charter schools have often taken the children from the poor communities, and a lot of other special needs children that the public schools haven't wanted, and they've done a remarkable job.
They siphon off the ones with the most talent and leave behind the ones with less, or can't speak the English language. Therefore, that's why you get this kind of the results from the public schools versus the results from the charter schools. Charter schools always want children who have parents who are supportive also.
Supportive is more politically supportive. The argument in terms of cherry picking who goes in has often been made by the unions. It has not been backed up by any of the studies and work done. And yet, even Mandami, who's about to come into office, one of the first things he comes out to say is how he's opposed to charter schools. The charter schools have done a remarkable job for the most needy students. And for people who care about helping disadvantaged children from black and brown communities and others, this is the best opportunity for them. And yet we fight tooth and nail to limit the number of schools and to limit the student population. I think we need to be more supportive of that.
Because they're taking out, removing the students, siphoning off the students that hold the others behind.
It has not been backed up by any of the data at all.
All right.
And their outcomes on standardized testing are significantly better than the public schools.
I'm sure.
Yeah. We need it. It's a very important issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, last but not least, Andrew will talk about institutionalized governmental corruption. Take it away, Andrew.
Well, it's something I came across in both the corporate world and Wall Street. I'm sort of perpetually exposed to it. I sort of have the luxury of discussing with you because at this stage of life, when I'm sort of a retiree who just looks after his personal interests, there are no repercussions. I'm not registered with any institution or any regulatory body to basically say, you can't talk about these type of issues. But it's very significant and it's onerous, and the reach of government has become far more pervasive. And it becomes pervasive in quiet little ways. When you go through this testing, when you look at the regulatory work you have to do each year to maintain professional licenses,
oh God.
they keep on inserting new verbiage that's open to interpretation. And open interpretation, which will only be used to make your life miserable if you're deemed either a whistleblower or somebody who stands in their way. I think it's very difficult. And I think most people are decent and most people want things to be better. And yet it becomes a career threat to put themselves out there and say this should be different. I mean, many years ago, Jamie Dimon, who heads up JP Morgan Chase, who I've always had incredible respect for, he came out during Obama's years to say, when Elizabeth Warren and others were getting all over bank regulation, has anybody looked at the sum total of all the laws you're passing and see what the aggregate effect is? His reward for saying that, which was obvious to others, but it took a person of his stature to say it, was endless numbers of fines and penalties from all these government regulations and endless numbers of audits till he stopped commenting about the government. So the government has many levers they could pull to make life difficult for those that try to cause them embarrassment.
How about talking about institutional trading?
Well,
insider trading.
Well, first of all, they had a Supreme Court ruling years ago that sort of changed the definition of insider trading. And in different parts of the world, they have different rules and regulations, so it's really quite different than it is here. I mean, to me, if insider trading ever mattered, the first place to start would really be Congress. Because when you have Nancy Pelosi outperform Warren Buffett for 20 years, that's shocking. When I read about Congressman Khanna from California, on average doing 17 trades a day, it sounds more like a day trader than a legislator. When you have Mikey Sherrod, just elected governor of New Jersey, makes $7 million and have no recollection of that, off of her own government filings, while she's running for office. Both parties unite in not wanting to outlaw this because they both perfected the mechanism for gaining personally. When Nancy Pelosi, with great fanfare, went to Taiwan, showing how, when China was trying to blockade and cause trouble, how, she would stand up for democracy. On her flight included her son, who made an investment in a private Taiwanese company. And 6 or 8 months after his investment, they cashed him out of 50% of it for about a $70 million profit. So, things aren't quite as virtuous as they might seem. And I think we need, again, it gets back to process, and it gets back to backchecking to understand, you're allowed to make money, you're allowed to make investments. What's going on? What are we giving up? Even when it comes to President Trump. I mean, it was, nice of him to be supportive of crypto, which I'm very supportive of, and think it would be, great all around. But he shouldn't be creating what they refer to as shit coins, with he and his wife and sons doing things like this and benefiting themselves. And his son set up a bank, and all of a sudden, Qatar puts in $500 million and they don't really care. They're not going to lose the money, but meanwhile they get to earn free interest that they pay themselves. All these countries have figured out how to curry favor and take advantage of our system by using these loopholes. And these people benefit themselves personally and undermine to me, the integrity of our country by doing things that are inappropriate. And they actually happen on both sides of the aisle. So it's not one party or the other. They have to be addressed nationally. We have to make rules that are fair and consistent. We have to make sure that it's country over individual.
And what bothers me is when you are in government and you're making laws, you know what laws are going to be passed before they get passed.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really egregious to see what goes on and to see how many politicians miraculously have family members who work for the companies that they oversee. And, and again, it happened to even people I had great, respect for. Manchin, who did an incredible job, for the country from West Virginia. Miraculously, his daughter had a questionable academic resume and then went to work for one of the top companies in his state for a modest amount of money, and in no time at all becomes CEO, making a multiple 8-figure salary, and rules and regulations are changed, enhancing the profitability of that company at the expense of everything else. So, no one wants to call it out, and no one wants to prosecute these different events.
Because you are?
It ends the game. You're a whistleblower, it ends it. You would be, both parties would unite only to eliminate you, not to change what's going on.
Hiring relatives. Well, I guess you gave one example.
Well, I mean, you look at what goes on. I mean, you had President Biden accused of what, Hunter Biden, who was the smartest person he ever knew. And then you have Donald Trump, having his son-in-law and his sons. And lo and behold, their business opportunities are sort of boundless because everyone who wants influence with them all over the world is directing business their way. And it's just, it's really crazy. Countries like Qatar, you sort of have to tip my hat to them. They've brilliantly figured out how to play the system. I mean, they're buying off our colleges and universities. They're opening campuses.
You say buying off.
They're coming up with tens of billions of dollars that they've given to the most influential colleges in America. They've built campuses in their country. And what they do with that is they then want the right to put in an unlimited number of students. They pay full tuition for them. but they're not real students. They go for years and years, they never get a degree. They become socially and politically disruptive to what goes on. They pay off the universities. When I say pay off the universities,
you say socially and politically disruptive. Would you kindly circle back and flesh that out?
Correct. When you have, Columbia University and these schools all across the country, on one hand, they're providing the economic support for these Palestinian rights groups who are making life unbearable for Jewish students on campus. It's not a matter of free speech at all. It's a matter of hostility and exerting pressures. They have their quote-unquote professors who come in and become part of the faculty. They declare them as professors. Overwhelmingly, they have negligible academic backgrounds when they come into these schools. So it doesn't undermine the medical school per se or the law school per se, but it undermines the campus and the ability to move around. These are really wrong. Then, they influence the top schools when it comes to the curriculum. Lo and behold, all of a sudden, the word Holocaust, which literally came about because of World War II and what happened to the Jews, is now more broadly used for people who have gone through some difficult time and watered down. They've taken their misrepresentations. They're affecting the textbooks. They get it in the textbooks in California. The teachers union then sees to it that all the books in the country in elementary schools are changed. The curriculum's changed. So somebody who learned things before, new children coming up now are not learning the same thing. The facts, historical facts haven't changed, but what's being taught and learned has changed in ways that's detrimental to the truth. That's more an element of indoctrination than it is teaching.
Andrew, thank you so much for having come on our show. You were very educational. This is Speak Up. I am Sandra Schulte. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.